right, friends, welcome back. I have my friend Kevin Flynn with me here again, 35-year federal prosecutor. He outdid me by 5 years. I was just a 30-year federal prosecutor. And together we try to bring all our experience to bear on legal issues of the day in what is now a recurring segment called the Prosecutors Verdict. With that, Kevin, welcome back. I appreciate you jumping on with us.
Thanks, Glenn. Great to be here.
All right, so let's talk about what happened in the Comey and Letitia James hearing, combined hearings in federal court in Alexandria, Virginia. I was sitting in the courtroom watching the proceedings, and there was what I consider to be a bit of a bombshell dropped right in the middle of it. And it was when Judge Curry said there seemed to be some grand jury information, inferentially, some audio recordings that she believed were missing. So why don't you set up, because you actually sent me the HuffPost piece that kind of set up how it is that Judge Curry decided to share that information in that hearing.
Sure. Well, as your audience knows, there are actually multiple motions that James Comey and Letitia James have filed to dismiss this case. And two of them, one of them is for vindictive prosecution, probably a companion within the same motion is for selective prosecution, and also a motion that challenges the appointment of Lindsey Halligan as U.S. attorney as being unauthorized, illegal, and therefore challenges the legitimacy of the indictment. And in the mix in all of this is potentially a claim of abuse of the grand jury. So the context in which the judge made the observation was in connection with a representation that had been made by the government that Attorney General Bondi had reviewed all of the grand jury materials in deciding that a fix-it for the appointment of Halligan was to appoint her special counsel, name her special counsel, just a title change, basically, and then to retroactively ratify whatever she had done. So the government made this representation, and the judge, you were in the courtroom, Glenn, but I can only imagine, it seems as if the statement was kind of dry and droll, but the observation was, well, Attorney General Bondi could not possibly have reviewed all of the grand jury materials because there is a gap in the recording of the grand jury. And it's been reported that the grand jury in the Comey case returned their indictment after hours. Court hours usually end in most courthouses 4:45 or 5 o'clock because of cost and having to pay overtime to staff, et cetera. This indictment was returned by the grand jury after court hours. And so the judge has said that from 4:28 p.m. on the day that the indictment was returned, all the way through the time of the indictment return, there is a gap in the audio recording. And just so your viewers know the significance of this, I used to say that I had the most transparent, but also the most secret job around, because everything we did in court in trial was transparent, but our grand jury investigations were by nature and by necessity confidential because of various issues that we don't need to get into right now involving witness security and things of that nature. But because those proceedings are confidential, it is extraordinarily important for prosecutors to follow norms in terms of how they handle the grand jury. Everything that the prosecutor says to a grand jury is on the record. Everything that a witness testifies to is not only on the record, but a written transcript is prepared in every case of those witnesses. And the witnesses who testify at trial end up having to have their transcripts turned over by the government to the defense. But there is not, from the time that a case is called, you call a case in the grand jury, the door closes. The next thing, are we on? Yes, we're on. Court reporter is typing away, and also there's an audio recording that is being generated at the same time. And there is not a single thing that you say to a grand jury that pertains to a case that is not recorded. And in this case, of all cases, keep in mind this is a first time, a never before prosecutor in the grand jury for the first time, and the only inference that I can draw, and I don't want to be cynical here, but these people have given me cause for cynicism. It is either that the grand jury reporter was not in the room when representations were being made about this case, to the grand jury. And these are really, really significant representations because they were meant by way of persuasion and advocacy for this indictment to be returned, or the U.S. attorney, then U.S. attorney, now I guess special counsel, somehow ordered the grand jury reporter out of the room. This is an extraordinary breach of grand jury protocol. It's an extraordinarily, if everything that I've said is true, or even if 1/10 of what I've said is true, it's an extraordinary ethical breach, and it is going to have to be dealt with by the court and potentially by other forums.
And another possibility here that I think we should entertain is that everything was recorded, everything was transcribed, everything was provided to the prosecutors, to Lindsey Halligan, who then in turn gave everything to Pam Bondi. And maybe Pam Bondi really did have everything. But the question is, does the court, does the judge have everything? And here is why. And let me just say, I just gave an interview to Newsweek in an article that literally was published about 30 minutes ago. I will post it here on Substack as soon as we're done, but you can go to Newsweek's site and find it. And I said, listen, what the judge said led me to the reasonable inference that there is missing grand jury material. Here's why I say it. Just as Kevin said, every word we utter, we don't even breathe heavy unless we know that the grand jury reporter has said, we're on the record. It means we're ready to go, and every word will be captured until we are done being on the record. And that's when the prosecutor walks out. So what she said was, I don't believe I have all of the grand jury recordings here. Now, think about this. If deliberations were about to begin, here is what the grand jury audio recording would look like. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen all the witnesses. You have all the evidence. I've tried to answer your questions as best I could. Does anybody have any questions before I leave the room and turn it over to you all to deliberate? No, nothing. All right. Thanks, folks. Off the record. Tell me that somehow Judge Curry misunderstood what she was seeing when she reached the conclusion there are some missing audio recordings. So let me ask you this, Kevin. In the event there are missing grand jury minutes, what do you think the implications are of that? What do you see perhaps the judge doing with that knowledge that she may not have been given everything she asked for?
There are certain facts that we don't know, and we are drawing unavoidably inferences from them. But I would think that at this point, this judge is going to start demanding the highest ranking officers in the Department of Justice to come before her and explain this. This appointment, this U.S. attorney is not operating in a backwater jurisdiction where they're basically operating on their own. This was an indictment that was directed by the president. It was a procedure that was dictated by the attorney general, and the president's, if not the president's order is all over this. The Pam Bondi's fingerprints are all over this, and so I don't think. And you were able to see the demeanor of the judge, but I don't see this judge as being one who is going to back away from this and is just going to take it on faith that somehow or another there is an innocent but heretofore unprovided explanation for this gap, particularly given the circumstances here. Now, keep in mind, and we addressed this in a previous show, through 35 years of my experience and through 25 or 30 of yours, we never had a judge order us to turn over these tapes to begin with. It would only be on a showing of some type that there was abuse in the grand jury process, that that a judge would order the tapes of what the prosecutors actually said to the grand jury to be turned over. So we already have a judge who has sort of like crossed that, who's crossed the Rubicon there, right? Has already made a determination that this material needs to be turned over in the first place, which is extraordinary, and then to have the material include missing recordings is even more extraordinary. So I predicted, I think, in a private conversation with you that this is going so far south that the Department of Justice is going to end up dismissing the case against Comey as opposed to having Lindsey Halligan / Pam Bondi completely get destroyed by findings that this judge is going to make and or by testimony that they themselves are going to be compelled to provide. But then the issue becomes if the Department of Justice, and we haven't talked about this, I've cogitated on it myself. If the Department of Justice enters a dismissal, they are likely, because they don't want to displease the dear leader, they're likely to ask for that to be without prejudice, meaning that the government can rebring the case. And if they make that motion, I can very easily see the defense for both Mr. Comey and Ms. James saying that these dismissals or this dismissal should be with prejudice, meaning that the government cannot bring the case again. And then that would get into the judge having the opportunity to make inquiries as to alleged misconduct by the prosecutors in the grand jury.
Yeah, and both defense teams for James Comey and Letitia James made clear they want the dismissal to be with prejudice, so it could never be rebrought. So if we had to fashion some kind of a verdict, I'm not sure what our verdict would be here, but you want to take a stab at how you would rule, what you would call this?
My verdict right now is extremely suspicious. that's
Extremely, and you're being generous by saying extremely suspicious. I don't know if this is synonymous, but I'm gonna go. My verdict is nefarious as hell. I'm gonna go there because I'm a Jersey guy, so I had to slip a little something in. All right, Kevin, thank you for jumping on for today's Prosecutors Verdict. I'm sure we'll be doing this again next week.
Sounds great. Thanks, Glenn.
All right, see you, everybody. I'll see you later tonight.
Bye now.